Are you willing to try games ranked worse than 1000 on BGG? Here are a few you might consider. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. Today we are going to be talking about a modern classic, possibly a modern classic, self-proclaimed board game called Anachrony, and then we will be talking about some good games that are ranked over 1000, minus one exception. I'm one of your co-hosts, Mr. Nate Clark, and as always, seated across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
It's raining.
It's raining. I went on a hike today, like a 5-6 mile hike today. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Was there rain?
Nope, not a drop.
I would consider rain to be beautiful, so you just had to clarify.
But would you hike in it?
It depends how much rain there was.
Or how much of a hike it was.
Exactly, and where you were hiking. Like, is it cloudy?
It's raining, Cody. What?
Anyway, welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. We're happy to be podcasting. Nate, I am happy to be podcasting. Are you?
I'm always happy to be podcasting. That's my secret, Cody.
Yeah. It's cool. We can just sit down. We don't have to record anything. Don't have to video record anything. Editing is so much easier. Yeah, join the podcasting game, everybody. Just make a podcast.
But don't crowd the genre. So do something about home improvements or something else.
Yeah, no more board game podcasts. We got that covered for you. We're good.
This is the last one. Now it's complete. Cody, question for you.
Okay.
If there was one, what is the genre that you are least attracted to? What's one genre that is an absolute no? Like, it doesn't matter how good the game might have been, whatever. It doesn't matter who is recommending it to you, but the theme is just like an absolute no.
Okay, so by genre you mean like atmosphere that the game is set in?
Yes. Yeah. There's got to be something, right? That it's like, doesn't matter who the designer is, doesn't matter where you heard about it, doesn't matter who published it, you just won't touch it. And it has to be something realistic. It can't be about like child murder or something. It has to be like...
Oh, sure. Of course not, yeah. I confess this is not something I spend too much time thinking about. It's more like if I see a game that looks fun or doesn't look fun, that's how I make the decision. But if I had to choose some genre, like off the top of my head, one of the ones perhaps is just games set in like now times, just like a modern set game. But it depends also how the game is implemented. Like, I just played Dice Manor recently, and that's obviously a modern game, but I don't mind that. But probably for the most part, that might be a turnoff otherwise.
Yeah, Dice Manor is also decently abstract, right?
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
Well, I'm thinking, like, you mentioned modern. I didn't even think about modern, but, like, I think it's Smartphone Inc. is supposed to be super good. Not like super heavy, medium weight, but really, really good. But it's just like, it's the same thing. That's one of those games where it's like, man, people really, really love this game. But I just like, it's like, smartphones, like what?
I've kind of felt the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one called Automania where you're like producing cars, but it's just, it's like, modern, it's just making cars. See, if it's past times or it's in the future, that's exciting. Or if it's fantasy or anything else. But if it's nowadays, it's like, wow.
Or just if it's historical, as long as it's far enough back, right? Even something that could be like maybe even like 90s focused or something could even work. 80s focused could work. But much more recent than that, it's kind of like it's just not interesting, right? Because it's not old enough to be interesting yet.
Well, I think that's kind of the point of gaming, too, is it gives you the opportunity to live some sort of other experience other than what you're in right now, right?
Well,
so
Cody,
what's the point of playing a game?
You aren't marketing smartphones to people, okay? So that's an escape from reality for you if you play a board game about that.
Yeah, I often dream, Nate, about being a smartphone salesman, and I wish there was a game that I could play to really embody that experience.
If you could just live that dream, Cody.
Yeah. Sometimes I also wish I was on assembly line just making cars.
In a cartoon world, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, good question, dude. It was a good thinker.
Thanks. Anything new to report this week?
I actually do have some new things to report. I have 1.5 new things to report.
Is that like
Yeah.
an expansion, or you literally played half a game?
Well, no, I realized that we were playing Heaven and Ale wrong, which was kind of a letdown, and I actually like the wrong way better. It's pretty simple. If anyone hasn't played the game, this is probably not going to interest you in any way. But you know there's the little monk tiles that you can play?
No, I remember almost nothing about the game.
Okay, well...
I'm also not
game-
interested, Cody.
Okay, the game centers, you're on a hex grid, and you're putting down these resources on the hex grid, and you have to activate those resources to use them, basically. You don't get them just for playing them. But then you can also play a monk, and monks are activated in 2 different ways. In one way, when they're activated, they activate everything else around them. When the other way, all they do is they like move your brewmaster up 1 space. So they have very different functions depending on how they're triggered. And I had read the rulebook wrong for which way activates which is actually a significant change because one way triggers much more frequently than the other. And it kind of changed the gameplay. I'm sorry that this is so boring, but I wanted to say it. And that's my story.
That's interesting. I heard broom aster instead of brew master, and that threw me for a second. Not gonna lie. What else did you play this week?
Brewmaster. Let's make that a game, dude.
Absolutely not. Not on
It's
board.
no. It's not Smartphone Inc. It's Brewmaster Inc. And so you're marketing brooms, especially brooms that are made solely from resin made from the aster plant, and you're selling these to witches so they can fly around. What do you think?
You know what, Cody? You might be onto something.
It's going to be the sequel to Broom Service.
Okay, all right. And the spiritual sequel to Smartphone Inc. Actually, I think there already is one of those, so never mind.
Ah, dang it. Okay, well, there goes my hopes and dreams. Here's actually a game I actually played that's new. I played Fantasy Realms. Have you heard of this one?
Is that a game? What is that?
It is a game. It was a 2021 nominee for the Kennerspiel, actually, and
Really?
it has a Dice Tower Seal of Excellence on it. I've never heard of this, but whenever I go on Game Nerds, you have to get like right over $75 to get free shipping. I'll usually end up buying 1 or 2 games, and then I'm just kind of looking for some sort of low price game that I can slide in there. And so usually I'll just set the price to a max of like $20 or something, and then I'll just start looking through all the games that are on the list.
Sure.
And just looking them up on Board Game Geek. And so I saw this one, and I looked up a review from Tom Vassell, and he seemed to like it. And I got it. I really like it, dude.
Huh.
I don't think it's... let me look up what the rank is. I forget what it is. Let me waste your time.
Not the greatest name. Not gonna lie.
No, and that's why when I first looked at it, I'm like, this just looks kind of dumb. Okay, it's ranked 248. It looks like it's actually 2017, so I don't know why it's the 2021 nominee. But it had a reprint more recently that it like looks a little bit better, and I think there's a deluxe edition that came out, so I don't know if it just like came back into the public mind or something. But
weird. Wait, is it an Arcane Wonders thing by any chance?
No, it's not. It's WizKids is the publisher.
Okay.
So Fantasy Realms, it's a little game. It was only like $15+, something like that. It's just a little box. All it is a deck of cards and a little rule book. And the deck of cards has 10 suits, and the suits are like weather, beasts, armies, weapons. Is like 10 of these things that are just sort of fantasy war themed. And then each card has a base strength value, which is basically just points. And then it has a condition that it either will be a bonus or a penalty. So the bonus is it will award you multiple points or like more points if it's paired with another kind of card somewhere in the deck. But it may have a penalty if it's associated with another card or if you don't have a card to like activate it. And what you do on the game, it's just drafting. So you're drafting to 7 cards. Well, I guess you start the game with 7 cards, but you're slowly drafting out until there's a certain number of cards in the discard pile, and then that triggers, and then whoever has the best scoring hand wins. And so it feels, in a way, a little bit like an engine builder, even though the only thing you're building with this engine is just points. You're just trying to get a good combination of cards that score off of each other.
And it's all about combos. There's no, it's not like Furnace. It's not like mixing and matching stuff.
No, yeah, entirely about combos. I mean, the cards still have a base point value, but if that's all you're scoring, like, you're not going to get very many points.
Okay. Well, it doesn't sound particularly interesting, but I will take your word for it that you enjoyed it, at least.
Yeah, it was very quick playing, too. You could probably knock this out like a 2-player. I was just playing with Kirsten, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Play another.
I feel like most games that are just a deck of cards shouldn't ever take too long, I would hope.
Sure.
Yeah. Nothing new from me. I feel like the only thing worth noting is that I did play Arc Nova twice.
Oh, yeah.
Back-to-back days. That was fun. Taught Anna, and then the next day she was like, we should play Arc Nova again. So I played it twice. Neither was a short game.
Did anyone score negative points? That's what I want to know.
She did the first game, yeah. But then she mopped the floor with me. She scored like 30 some odd points, like 35 points in her second game. Like, yeah, really good score for Arc Nova. So,
were you in the positive?
I was also in the positive. I scored like 15 or something. Yeah.
Again, only game I've heard of where there is a question of whether you will be positive points or not at the end.
Where you literally start with, what, negative 100 or something?
Probably, yeah. Everyone's tied at negative several hundred points, yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's it for me. Nothing fun, nothing new.
All right, well, that's cool. Maybe we should hit it off and go to the game of the week.
So I feel like I could try explaining this one if you want. Probably gonna miss some stuff, so you'll just have to pick up the scraps and fill in the gaps.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
I'm gonna start saying that. Pick up the scraps and fill in the gaps. I like that.
That's pretty good.
You heard that here first.
Yeah, I'm gonna start saying hot legumes instead of cool beans too.
Yeah, okay. Let's just make this a catchphrase. Like every episode we have to have a new catchphrase, all right?
I like that. We'll just make a big list.
New challenge, new segment.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, Anachrony is our game of the week. So this game it's not really post-apocalyptic. It's futuristic, and there's some cataclysmic event. Is it an asteroid, or is it just like death?
There's like a crazy, terrible meteor that's going to come, strike the Earth, and like destabilize it, but it also brings the time travel element with it.
Okay. So anyways, the people of the present, I guess the people of the future, are trying to assist you in the future are trying to assist you in the past to help you prepare and evacuate before this meteor hits, I guess. And so that's a strong element of this game is there's a lot of time travel. There's an actual physical, tangible timeline where you can borrow things from yourself, and then you have to pay them back as you move along this timeline. You time travel back and pay yourself off. But it's primarily a worker placement game. There's some kind of, I wouldn't call it city building, but there are some like there's an action building kind of tile placement mechanism on your player board. Some track action, but it's basically, for the most part, just collecting workers, collecting resources, getting bonus cards. It's your classic Euro, mash all this stuff together, lots of things interconnecting between all the different mechanisms, lots of little bonuses off of other things, and you're trying to score as many points as possible, basically.
Well said. Good summary. I mean, there's so much in the game that it's not like we can explain everything without just reading the rulebook.
And I haven't played. Hey, there's a new segment. Let's just read rulebooks for people.
Ooh,
this will be our how to play
Good
X
replacement.
game, and we'll just literally read it verbatim.
I like it. You got to work on the German version, though.
I can do that.
Okay, sweet. Nice.
Pick up the scraps, Cody.
All right, thanks. I mean, you did a pretty good job. That's Anachrony. I feel like we can just explain the rest of it via describing what we like.
Yeah, go for it.
Or dislike, or both. Well, personally, I like the journey of the game. One mark of a good game is if it's not just the same thing the whole time, but there's sort of an arc to it. And Anachrony really has a dramatic arc because the first half of the game is fairly different from the second half of the game. You're starting off, you have access to all these charging ports for your crazy mech workers. So you can, no, I guess they're not mechs. They're exosuits. So you can power those up by spending some resources, and then you can deploy them onto the map. After 4 rounds, the meteor impact happens, and that actually destroys parts of the board. It's not like an immediate effect, but basically what it means is as you start taking those normal worker places with your exosuits in the second half of the game, those spaces disappear and are destroyed once you leave them. They all become one-off effects. And so you're slowly, as the rounds progress to the end, you're running out of places to go. I just think that's really clever because you can't just keep the same tactics every round. You have to be planning ahead and knowing okay, I'm not going to be able to even power up as many of my exosuits the last couple rounds. I'm going to need to switch and really make those turns count. So I thought that was pretty dope.
That part is pretty thematic as well, I would say.
Yeah, which is weird for a Euro game where the theme actually impacts the game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that also triggers the end game, right?
Sort of, yeah. The game will end definitely after 7 rounds. That is the cutoff, but it can end earlier. If everyone uses up all the worker places on the board and there's nothing available, then it can end a round, maybe 2 rounds early, although I have a tough time seeing that happen.
So basically an hour, maybe 2 hours early.
Yeah, per round. I mean, we weren't very efficient the last time that we played this. This took us what? It was 4 people, and it was 4 hours, I think.
It was like an hour per person, basically.
Yeah, that was pretty great. I mean, we were slow. This can be played much faster than that.
I'm sure it can, especially when everyone knows how to play.
Yeah, exactly. I guess half of the people were new. So yeah, I like the arc of the game. I like how you can move to pay yourself back in the past. How this is basically just a loan. Time travel is just taking a loan, as Tom Vassell has explained in his own review of this game. But you can, in earlier rounds, demand a resource from yourself in the future, and you just get it. And then in the future, you can pay yourself back, but if you don't, you're going to risk just bending reality, and then you lose points for that, which is also fairly thematic, except then the time travel doesn't make any sense if you don't actually pay yourself back. But you know, it's still cool.
Well, it creates a paradox, right? That's what they're called in the game.
Sure. Yeah, paradox tiles, tokens,
Anomaly.
anomalies. Those things,
Oh yeah.
There
Wait,
are
so it's
there
paradoxes
are so many terms.
If you have too many paradoxes, then you create an anomaly or something like that. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
Yeah, and the anomalies themselves are the negative points, but they also cover buildings that you're producing, so they can take opportunities from you. So yeah.
To piggyback on that, I like that this isn't just you borrow from yourself in the future, and then at some point in the future you have to pay yourself back. It's not just that you have to pay yourself back. It's actually an opportunity to make more points, because time traveling is part of this game, and every time you time travel, you can be getting more points for that. And so, yes, you still have to pay yourself back, you still have to give up a resource, but you're getting points in the process. It's not just okay, I'm taking an extra mech now, and at some point in the future, I just won't. I'll just have to spend one. There's more to it than that.
Which is kind of a necessary component of the game, because if you didn't have some sort of bonus for time traveling, I guess just other than getting a resource early, there wouldn't be much point to it. But you do. Well, yeah, that is tough, because having more resources earlier in the game opens up more opportunities later. So I guess that's reward in and of itself. But I agree that it's cool that you get rewarded with points for successfully doing that.
Yes, it's a very good idea, and it works very well too.
Yeah. I also like the worker placement in this game, because there's 3 different ways worker placement is happening. So you have the basic workers, which they're 3 different colors, and then there's a wild version, and they all have different sort of inherent abilities for what they're better at doing and what they're worse at doing. Some of them you can't even use them to do certain things, which is cool. So there's little restrictions. But other than on your own board, you can't just place those workers willy-nilly out into the main board. So you have your own little buildings that you're going to be producing that you can put these workers on. But if you want to put them on the main board, you have to pair them with a powered up exosuit, which in of itself is a different type of worker.
Kind of.
I guess yeah, sure. It's an exosuit worker. And then the third level is that you have these, they're not really workers. They're just tokens really, but they're little free actions that you can activate as many times as not as many times as you're able to. It's like once per round or something. But they're those things that are supposed to be workers.
It feels like like you said, it's kind of, you have your core workers and they're different colors and they have different abilities. And then it's not really like placing a different worker when you put them on the board, but it kind of is. Like their color still really matters, but you just have to pair them up with an exosuit basically to put them on the front, or to put them on the board. Other than that, there's like one spot maybe on your player board, and then as you're getting buildings, maybe you're creating more spots that you could place guys without needing to use exosuits, which is actually a cool thing.
Yeah.
I do like that we have workers with different abilities though. And it's not, I guess it's kind of like, maybe kind of like, I don't know, what is it? Paladins, maybe? Paladins, there's kind of, but it's more specific than Paladins. Paladins is kind of like, here's a few different colored workers, and the spots kind of vary for which ones have to go there. But this one's more like, here's a spot, you cannot put this, you can put this, but if you put this, you'll get an extra bonus or something like that. Like there's a couple spots where the yellow worker gives you a discount or something. And so I like that they're more unique, definitely.
Yeah, it's basically asymmetry, but implemented just within worker types, which is cool.
Yeah, and it's another dynamic, instead of being creative with only the worker spots, you're also creative with the workers themselves.
Mm-hmm. I also like the art for the most part in the game. We'll get to that in a dislike, spoiler, but the art on your actual boards and then the main board and then I guess, of course, the box cover, all of that looks really nice. It really helps, I think, grow the theme because the game has a pretty solid theme, but that would be lost a little bit if you couldn't really visualize everything that's going on. And so it's just kind of a little background thing on the various boards that I feel like they implement pretty well.
I thought that the game looks really busy. As from a graphical design perspective, but the actual works of art themselves I thought were good. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree that it is pretty busy. There's a lot to interpret. Once you kind of figure out the whole like symbology system, it helps a lot. But when you're first looking at it, it's pretty confusing.
Yeah, the iconography is really there was a lot of like, Cody, what does this mean? Cody, what does this do? Cody, hand me the rules. So, and it's the weird thing about learning a complicated game for the first time is that it's not so much an Anachrony, but especially games where you have hidden cards, you have your hidden hand or whatever. You can't just like ask the person, what does this card do? Because you might be revealing something that you want to do in the game. And so a lot of times it's like, give me the rules and I'm going to hunt down this icon or some specific rule or something like that. So,
which kudos, here's another advantage. Kudos to the rulebook that it has a pretty comprehensive appendix for all the different tiles and things you might encounter in the game. And all those buildings that you have, they're actually numbered, so you can look up the number in the appendix and it's easier to find to see exactly what they do. Definitely. Yeah, I do too. Anything else you enjoy about Anachrony?
I like that there's asymmetry in the game as far as the different factions that you can play as. I wish it was a little more asymmetrical. It definitely is, like the mech spots are different and how many mech spots will get bombed or whatever is different. How your workers refresh and that kind of area of your board might be a little different also. It doesn't feel as unique as something like maybe Scythe, or, Root or something like that. But there's definitely still, I feel like, and I've only played it once, but I feel like depending on who you play as, there is at least some of your focus is different. A lot of people's focus is still the same, getting buildings, whatever. But somebody might focus on time travel a little bit more. Somebody might have water as a resource a little bit more, something like that. So I feel like there are some minor focus shifts, which I like.
Yeah, I think there are different types of asymmetry that you'll encounter in games. There's games like Scythe and Root where you're actually doing some different things that are pretty dramatically different. And then there's games, well, like Anachrony, where you're pretty much doing the same things, but there's different pros and cons to them, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. Like
It's
if
kind of a
your
little bit
time
different.
travel track might be more advantageous if you get to the end of it than somebody else if they get to the end of theirs, right? There might be
Yeah.
more points in it for you there. There might be more points in something else for them somewhere else.
Well, even at the end of the game, or towards the end of the game, there's a different way for each like character to score. Like when you perform the evacuation, it's a one-time thing
Yeah.
where you can get points based off of conditions, and those are pretty different.
So
But it does give you a focus.
that's another thing I want to talk about too. So evacuating, when you evacuate, you score this tile, whatever this ability is. And everybody has a different one that scores differently. But also, I don't remember what the penalty is. There's some penalty for the person who evacuates last. Do you remember what it is?
The penalty is just you score 3 less points for performing that action.
So I love that because you reach this point in the game where it's like, okay, everyone's allowed to evacuate now. Once you meet your requirements to evacuate, you can evacuate and score your tile. But you might want to milk it a little bit. You know, you might want to step back and take a little more time and maximize the amount of points you're going to score when you evacuate. However, the person who goes last, the person who doesn't maximize well enough and ends up having to evacuate last is going to score less points. I love that. In fact,
It's almost a push your luck mechanic.
it is, but it's like it's kind of a mind game, judging what other people are doing, trying to figure out what their plans are, and that's actually quite difficult in the game that's as busy as this. But I love it. I love that kind of bide your time, get as many points as you can, but still get out before at least one other person is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that specifically as something I enjoyed about Anachrony, but it definitely is a good aspect.
Lastly, I want to say that well, of course I like the borrowing mechanism. It works even better than I thought it was going to. I remember, watching reviews on this game, hearing people talk about it. I was like, okay, you're just borrowing from yourself and paying back. But for some reason, it's just not that simple. Part of it is the time traveling and scoring points. I like that. But it's just, I don't know. It just, maybe it's because it works so well thematically, honestly. And like you were saying, like, this game, the theme is so weird in this game because it really comes out in some parts, and at other points in the game, I feel like I'm just exchanging things and just placing workers, But other parts like that, and like a lot of the stuff associated with the evacuation, I feel like really is ingratiated well. One other interesting aspect to the time traveling is that there are also these super tiles, whatever they are, there's one associated with each section of the timeline.
Yeah,
and you
the
can
super
also
projects.
super projects. You can also buy those while you're in that portion of the timeline. So you're also planning like, okay, I'm going to go back to this portion of the timeline. I'm going to pay off that debt, and I'm going to purchase this super project maybe if it works out, And so that's something. There's also some luck in that kind of which ones come out that work for different people and where they end up. But in general, it's another fun aspect. So those are my likes. Definitely enjoy the game.
It's a bummer that we probably won't be able to play this together for a long time, if not ever. But if we do at some point, we need to play it where we flip over those round tiles and then play the advanced asymmetric.
Definitely, yeah.
Like time travel thing, because there's this order for like the first person to put down the tokens, like will get a bonus or a penalty, and there's a lot more to think about in that regard.
I bet it slows the game down because you have to think more about what you're betting and what other people are betting. But I bet it also speeds it up in another perspective because there's more free stuff being handed out too.
Yeah. I forget exactly how it works because we didn't even play it last time. But yeah, it's cool.
Negatives, Cody.
All right. I hate those workers, dude.
They're pretty ugly, man.
They are very ugly. It reminds me a lot of Otis. I know you haven't played Otis, but if you've seen
I can
the
picture
art,
the cover.
well, the cover looks beautiful, but that's the only place the art appears in Otis. like the rest of it is basically just graphic design and then like some diver pictures.
What did I say? What did I say? I think last episode. People absolutely judge games by their cover. So
yeah,
Otis
dude.
got it right. Maybe there's nothing good in the box.
They did.
Got it right.
Let's produce a mediocre game with a really good cover.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah, I just despise how the workers look, to the point where I almost just wanted to go like on Etsy or something and find just like a 3D printed like or acrylic token or something that I could replace all these with. But ultimately decided not to because I just don't think I'll play this often enough to enjoy the benefit.
The shape is important because it's a reminder. They have this kind of weird shape, and it's a reminder of what spots require that worker. And so if you sub out all those workers for just some random token, then especially for new people, they have to remember. They don't have that visual reminder of, okay, there's that symbol. That's the same shape as my worker, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as veterans of the game, that's not going to be a problem.
Of course.
Yeah, I suppose for first people. That's the first and main thing I dislike. What you got?
Okay, well, that's a fair. I didn't even put that on my cons because that isn't as important to me. But I do recognize that they're pretty ugly. They could have done a much better job, at least with the art or whatever on those pieces. For me, this is something that's inherent in a complex Euro, but the setup. Oh my goodness, the setup. It is
faux show.
I mean, you did most of it when we played because you played before, but wow, there's so many different tiles and little tokens and pieces and all this stuff, and it's all got to start on these different spots. You know, it's your typical complex Euro setup, and it's ridiculous, but that's just how these games work.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I had that on my list too, and it's not just the setup, it's the takedown. And the thing is, I'll make this a segue into another thing maybe I don't quite like about the game. The game is pretty draining. We'll come back to that. You spend a lot of brain power doing all this, and then you get to the end, you're like, all right, got to spend 45 minutes now sorting all these pieces to put them back in the box.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Just leave it. It's 1:30 in the morning. Don't need it.
Yeah.
So I'll piggyback on that back to the game is a bit of a draining experience. Maybe if we got really efficient at it and we played it quickly, that aspect might be a little bit better. But there's just so many things to think about. And in a way that pro that I talked about earlier of how the game has this arc where you kind of have to switch and change how you're thinking about it, that's also a little bit tiring. After you've done 4 rounds of doing it a certain way, then 3 rounds of doing it a little bit of a different way, your brain just gets a little bit fried towards the end. You're just like, all right, is this done yet?
But honestly, that's kind of good. Like, it adds even more kind of variety into how you approach the game, right? That that everyone's forced to pivot partway through, I think is pretty interesting, actually. Now, in a game that's already so long and pretty complicated, it may not be necessary, but I think it's still interesting. And honestly, as far as it being so draining, there's a lot of people that don't mind that, I think. You know, I get that these are personalized pros and cons lists, but I think there's a lot of people that love that. You know, they love Vital Lacerda and other really just complex Euros, you know? And so, and I definitely can, that kind of feeling resonates with me. I don't play a ton of complex Euros. I'm not that good at them either. But sometimes it's really fun to just sit down and be completely drained by a game because you put so much effort and strategy and thought into it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I guess that can just depend on the game. That's a good point because like Brass Birmingham, that is mega draining. But when I get to the end of it, I'm like, what could have I done better? Like, maybe I don't want to play another game right now, but tomorrow let's pull this out again. Whereas Anachrony, when I finish it, like, that was a good experience. I look forward to playing this again in 6 months.
Right. When I have to look up all the rules again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Another negative thing I wanted to say, something that's already kind of been talked about, is just that some parts of the game feel really mechanical and not thematic at all.
Sure.
All the stuff with the buildings is kind of just a little spatial puzzle, and not even really a spatial puzzle, but just kind of like, I don't know, there's just a lot of points in this game where it's just like, place X colored worker and gain X whatever, you know? And so while parts of it are pretty interesting and thematic, parts of it are very straightforward Euro.
Yeah, I agree with you there. What that brings me to the technology tiles, the little circles, squares, and triangle things. I think the game just didn't need those. I think that's kind of a waste of
Yeah.
time. It feels very, very abstract. Like I know they have a name. Like this is a personnel research technology science thing, and this one is technology itself, and this one is time. But it's literally just a black circle or a square or a triangle that has a symbol on it, and you have to you waste your time doing a whole action just to roll the dice to try to get symbols that you want. And the whole dice rolling aspect, like it's cool that you can kind of set one die to either a shape or a symbol, and then you roll the other die to try to get what you want. But you can't perform this action very often throughout the game. Like it takes a whole exosuit to put there. Like you're gonna have to do other things throughout it. And I know that you get points based off of if you get a set of those tiles, and then they're also just worth 1 point each. And then they do integrate into the super projects as a cost. But I'd rather just throw all that out and just put something else there, or just not have it at all, you know?
The weird thing is if you don't have it at all, those are some of the main spots on the game board, right? And so it's a mechanism that feels weird and kind of mini gamey and kind of like bloatware, but at the same time, they put it as main spots on the game board. And so if you take it out, something else has to be put back in. And maybe that's where the super projects could have come in instead, and maybe they don't have these weird, funky shape requirements for getting them, which I also thought was kind of lucky. You know, yeah, I agree that it feels weird and feels kind of bloaty, but if you took it out, something has to fill the hole because you're taking out like a quarter of the spots on the game board.
Yeah, a quarter of the spots, but not a huge impact on the game itself.
True.
I think. So, yeah, I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
Definitely. I totally forgot about those two. You mentioned them. That's how unimportant they are.
I know. I mean, you can do well with them, I think, because they're points are hard to get in the game, and these are 1 point each. And then if you have a correct set of 3, it's worth like an additional 2 points, so you can get 5 points per 3 if you're the most efficient. But I just don't care. I just don't want to. I want to do something else, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you dislike?
Yeah. Only one other thing for me. There was a really weird part in the game. So partway into the game, some like weird in-game NPC showed up and like bought a sewing machine, and it was like this weird kind of it was like this weird 30-minute rabbit trail in the game that really didn't have anything else to do with what was going on. And the weirdest part is that it was cooperative too. And so it was like, we're doing this competitive game, but now we have this cooperative like side adventure where we're like pawning this sewing machine, and I have no sewing machine knowledge, so I can't really participate. So I just thought it was thematically dissonant. I don't know. What'd you think?
I didn't know where you're going with that for a second. Dude, nobody has any idea what's going on right now. I do. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no sewing machine NPC in Anachrony. I was making a sale. There was a transaction of a sewing machine to a man, and he bought it. But he wanted to make sure it worked first. And I didn't know how to run it because it was my wife's machine, and she hasn't run it for like 5 years or something. So yeah, we had to take a break from Anachrony to meet the guy who was buying it and try to figure out how to make the sewing machine work. Are you happy now, Nate? Is this what you wanted?
All right, that's it. Yep, those are all my negatives.
Did you want some sort of apology or something?
No, I was just like, that's one of my memories from that game is that like, I was like, we just took a break for a while to do that. And I was like, I'm just going to throw this in. There's no bitterness here. I just thought it was funny. All right.
That's good to hear. Maybe we should take that opportunity and move over to our board banter then.
Let's do that. Our board banter. Okay.
Yeah. So when I said that like there's going to be transition music, then I realized there's not.
It's just a habit because we have transition music earlier in the episode. We don't hear it. So, I said earlier. So this is our top 3 games over the top 1,000, higher than the top 1,000. No, lower than the top 1,000.
Worse than the top 1,000.
Stupid top lists. Worse than the top 1,000, with one notable exception. We feel like we've talked about this game too much. It would be a shoo-in for this list. Stronghold 2nd Edition, egregiously rated at, I don't even know what, 1,400 and something.
Yeah, it's sad.
Not allowed to be on this list.
Nope. Talked about it too much. We had to pick some other content. But hey, a good way to find some other pieces, some other games that maybe we haven't given enough limelight.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can start if you want.
Sure. What's your number 3?
My number 3 has been mentioned not too long ago. It's ranked as of the making of this list. It was ranked 1,389. This is Starfarers of Catan. I haven't played a bunch of Catan spin-offs. I know there are a few out there, not as many as Carcassonne. To me, this was almost as good as base Catan with Seafarers and Cities and Knights. So base Catan with 2 expansions, I think, is a pretty good game. Without one or either of those, I don't enjoy it anymore. But with both those expansions, I think it's really good. And Starfarers is almost on par with that as a base game. It has the same, like, rolling dice, collecting resources, but there's all these clumps of planets on this huge space map, and you have different spaceships. You're going out, you're settling on different planets and getting resources from those. And then there's these 4 different alien races that you can send trade ships to and get bonus cards that have abilities throughout the whole game. And then there's these event cards that get flipped every so often, and you might have to fight space pirates, or you might have to make a deal with a trader or something like this. So it's way more just unique than Catan. Catan is so vanilla at this point, you know? And Starfarers feels, even though it's also decently old, feels like such a kind of breath of fresh air, where it's like we have the Catan mechanisms, but there's so much else going on, you know?
I have a question for you, Nate.
Yeah.
Why play this over Galaxy Trucker?
Because Galaxy Trucker is a stupid design. Actually, I wouldn't say it's a stupid design. I think it's actually decently intelligent. It's kind of a unique design. Does not work for me at all. I hate that game.
Well, thematically, everything you described there is basically Galaxy Trucker. You're like going across the galaxy, you're encountering things, you're fighting off pirates.
Yeah, but half of it just happens. You don't don't even do half of it. It just happens to you.
Life happens to you, Nate. You don't happen to life.
Well, if that's how you feel about it, why don't you just go play Lord of the Rings Deck Builder, Cody? Because that game just happens to you also.
That game sucks, dude. Because you have no say in that game. You're like, I'm gonna draft this card, but I can't.
Galaxy Trucker is even worse, Cody, because you prepare. You spend half the game preparing, and then just random crap happens in the second half of the game that you can't really prepare for anyways. You don't know what you're preparing for.
That's like life, dude. You don't know what you're preparing for. You just have to prepare. But at least you have the opportunity to do so. Lord of the Rings Deck Builder is like, oops, I flipped over a card. Now just trash your whole hand. You can do nothing.
You know what we should do? This is a segment idea. We should have kind of a versus thing where we each take a game that we hate way more than the other person, and we just argue about which one's worse.
I don't think we'd ever come to a conclusion.
No, you don't have to. It's just for the sake of the argument.
We haven't done a board ranter yet, have we?
No.
Well, kids, all those peeps out there listening, one of our segments for board banter, it's going to be a board ranter, and that kind of sounds like what you just described there a little bit. But you know, maybe I should talk about my number 3. Get us back on track.
Yes.
All right. My number 3, this actually ranks in at 3,923. So
stinking
this is pretty
garbage.
Stinking garbage, you would think, except it's not. This is 10-Minute Heist, The Wizard's Tower. I would assume this is still in print. I don't know. It's one of those little games that obviously if it's ranked that low, like is it still being produced? I don't know. I think it was my older brother actually got this for me. This was in my Wii years of being a board gamer, before I was really a board gamer, and this is one of the ones I got. And it still persists to this day in my mind as being a pretty good game. 10-Minute Heist is just a bunch of little square cards essentially that you set up in rows of 4 or 5, I think, and you make I think 8 of those rows, and each of those rows represents a floor of the wizard's tower, and all of these are different little artifacts. So you start at the top, because thematically, I guess your character climbed a rope or something and went in the top window, and you're just going to slowly descend down through the tower, picking up different artifacts, and they all have different colors. And once you get down, you can choose to be like the first person to leave the tower. You can actually leave whenever you want, but then all the other players will have more chances to draft stuff. But the last person to leave is going to get penalized and gets like they score less points at the end of the game, even though they had more opportunity to take cards. So it's this cool
Basically,
little balancing
like the
act.
evacuation mechanism.
Yeah, just like Anachrony. It's another little mini system of that. And then the scoring at the end of the game is there's different awards given out based on who has the highest face value of different sets of cards. We talked about this in a previous board banter of like worst game rule fails. We thought it was number of cards, not the value on the cards. But yeah, whoever has the best value in like red cards, they'll score like 5 points, and whoever has the most in green cards.
Do you think Splendor Duel took any inspiration? I kind of doubt it, but there are parts of Splendor Duel that kind of remind me of this. Maybe also Splendor. I haven't played Splendor in ages, so I can't remember.
Like what parts are you thinking?
Like collecting different colors and comparing your value, I guess. I guess you don't really compare your value too much. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the rubies and the shiny colors.
Nate, you need to stop comparing value so much. Like, just let it be.
Cody, your list sucks and mine's amazing compared to it.
Our list so far is one item.
All right, should we move on then?
I think the game is good and it deserves more recognition. Go get 10-Minute Heist. It plays in 10 minutes, hence the name.
All right, this game is better than 10-Minute Heist, even though it's ranked 2,000 positions worse. This game.
Okay. What is this?
This game is as of making this list. This game was ranked 5,065. This is Canasta Caliente. I don't know where Caliente ranks versus base Canasta, but they're basically the same game. So this is a set collect. It's just a card game. It's a set collection card game where you are basically trying to lay down as many different melds as possible of the same type. So there's numbers like 1. It's like ace through jack basically. But you're doing this by you just draw a card off the deck and then you discard a card, and in between you can lay down some cards if possible. Once you've laid down a canasta, which is 7 of a kind, maybe including wilds, then you're allowed to lay down all of your cards once you're able to, and then the game ends. Kind of like Rummy Cube a little bit. Which I hate. I hate Rummy Cube. The most fun part about this game is how stressful it is, because you draw a card and then you discard a card. And so the discard pile keeps getting bigger and bigger throughout the game. But you can also take the entire discard pile if you have like a pair that's the same as what the other person discarded. And so this discard pile builds and builds and builds, and the tension builds with it, and it becomes this mind game of trying to remember what the other person's discarded and what you think they have, what you think they don't have. And there's some moments where somebody will take just like a stack of like 30 cards or something from the discard pile. Pretty great moments. So other than that, it's a decently straightforward kind of set collection meld making. But it's not it's still a point scoring thing that you play lots of rounds in. So.
I really don't remember how to play this game, but I do recall you teaching it to me early on in our board game career, I suppose.
Sure.
And I do remember liking it quite a lot. I don't think I did super well, but it was fun.
I would, if you can find a copy, I would encourage you to play. It plays perfectly fine at 2. I would definitely, you could probably find a copy for $10 or something, maybe even less. I like it a lot.
Here's the deal. I'm not going to argue with your list, but I feel like this almost doesn't count because it's like verging in my mind into the realm of games like, I don't know, Uno and Phase 10 or like Pinochle, for example. They don't really feel like hobby games to me, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
I can understand. I did, to be fair, in your defense, compare it to Rummy Cube while I was explaining it.
Okay.
But I guess, I don't know, to me it doesn't feel that way. It definitely feels like its own thing. I think you're right, though. I think it's kind of borderline. I think it's kind of on the verge in the gray area.
Yeah. Because I would almost include, if you're putting that in there, I would throw Pinochle on this list, probably. And I'm looking it up on the Geek. It's ranked 3,000, so it would qualify. This 1864 is where it origins to.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
See, that, I don't know. See, look up Canasta. And, it's... I don't know.
1939. That's old, son.
It's not as old as 1864. Get off my back, Pinochle.
Wait, that's still pretty old. What are you talking about?
I don't know. To me, like, I didn't even consider that it was kind of too generic to be on this list. But hey, nobody said we couldn't put generic games on this list, Cody.
That's true.
So
that's true.
Maybe you're just dumb
Hey,
for not putting Pinochle.
here's the thing. I'm not the judge. The audience is. So take that as you will.
Okay.
My number 2. This is a game. Okay, get this. This is a game that is a derivative of a video game that is a derivative of another video game.
Wait, so the card game is based on the derivative video game? The deriving video game?
Well, this is a board game, but this is a board game that is a derivative of a game, or of a video game, that is itself a derivative of another mainstream video game. Is this giving you any inkling to what this might be?
Do I know this game?
I taught it to you. We played it.
Taught it to me.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
All right, this is Fallout Shelter, the board game. Because you got Fallout, and then they made Fallout Shelter, like basically the computer game.
Oh, that's right. It's an app.
This is the board game version of that.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. This is a fun little game. I think it's a good example of a worker placement game, maybe for people who haven't played very many games. There isn't like too much going on, but there's still some important decisions you have to make of balancing where you're going to put your workers. There's a couple different resources you're trying to keep in the balance. That's like food, water, and power, I think. Yeah, power. That's the one.
The 3 essentials in life.
The 3 essentials.
Oh,
food,
I was
water,
thinking.
power.
Oh, I guess you mean electricity when you say power, right? I thought you meant like as an intangible idea. Okay.
No. Yeah, just pure ability, just raw strength.
Food, water, and
This is
shelter? Nay, power.
Invincibility. Yeah. Fallout Shelter, the board game. Yeah, I mean, it's not a super great comparison to the video game it's a derivative of. Like, you can get the app Fallout Shelter and play that. Like, sure, it's fun, but the board game's a different experience. But it's cool. The box that it comes in is a Vault-Tec lunchbox, which I think is pretty dope.
I hate that. I think it's kind of a fun little fan servicey thing, but as a collecting board game, from a collecting board games perspective, I think it's just annoying.
Yeah. I will say I don't like displaying it because it's a tin box, so it just doesn't match the rest of the games.
It doesn't fit the vibe.
Yeah, but for what it is, I think it's cool.
That's fair. And not a bad choice.
Do you remember much? Do you remember much from this game?
I remember jumping around and activating buildings and the monsters being really annoying.
Yes, they are super annoying.
Yeah.
You have to fight them.
I think it's not a bad game. I don't think I loved it too much. Like, I wouldn't have considered it for the list, but also I definitely will allow it on yours.
Sure. Hey, if you can have Canasta, then I can have Fallout Shelter, the board game.
That's not even a fit. That doesn't even make any sense, Cody. All right.
Exactly, because Canasta is so out there that it's not even a comparison. Also, this is rank 1148.
11. Oh, okay. That's barely made it. All right.
Pretty close, yeah.
My final one is ranked 2,924. Mine is, I believe, the German version is the one I learned. This is Kuhhandel Master. I think the English version is You're Bluffing, and they're pretty similar. They may not be exactly the same. This is a very strange game. It's another set collection game but you start with, the only cards you start with are money cards. And the money cards can be anywhere of a value from 0 to 100 and somewhere in between. But from the back, they all look identical. So everyone starts with the same amount of money. But at a certain point in the game, you exchange money with people. And so it's hard. You don't always know who has how much money. You just know how many money cards they have. It becomes very important. But basically, that's all you start with. And then there's a deck of animals, and there's 4 of a kind. This is basically like a way better Go Fish, is the only way I can describe it. And this is my number 1 on my list, so hear me out. You're basically, you're trying to collect sets of 4 animals. And the only way you're allowed to score is if you collect a set of 4. And I believe the game ends once all the sets have been made. But basically, on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can just have a card be flipped over on the top deck, from the top of the deck, and then it's auctioned off. Just like your standard bidding, like people raising up on each other until somebody finally gets it. But then there's a couple different other ways that things are auctioned. There's another one where there's certain special cards that when they get flipped over, the auctioneer, the person who's auctioning it, will count down from 10. And whenever somebody tells them to stop, they get the card and they have to pay that much in hundreds. So it's kind of this like waiting. It's like 10, 9, 8. You're kind of waiting like, when you're going to tell them to stop? Is somebody going to jump in before you or whatever? So that's kind of fun. But then you also have the rats. The rats are interesting. The rats are negative points. And whenever they show up, they get auctioned off in a reverse way, basically. Basically, people put money in a circular. You keep putting money cards face down in on the rats until somebody finally caves and they take all the money and the rat card. And so, again, they're all face down. You don't know exactly what value of money is being put down. But the rat cards are basically negative points. They negate your sets. But then the other thing you can do on your turn is if somebody has a card that you have, let's say I have a cat and you have collected a cat also, I can challenge you for your cat. And so our cats kind of go, not to battle, but we're battling over them in a way. And so we each take however much money we want from our hand. So we take that many money cards and we both put them face down. And then we look at the other person's money and you get to keep whatever the other person gave you. And then depending on who paid how much, somebody wins the other person's cat, basically. And so the game keeps going like this, and you're either flipping cards off the top and auctioning them, or you're trying to basically buy/steal other people's animals until everyone has sets. It's only a group game. It only works with like 4+. But honestly, it's a brilliant design and it's so much fun.
What I've just been thinking this whole time is like if someone heard the last 90 seconds, 120 seconds, however long it took you to explain that, and if they weren't a board gamer, they'd just be like, what are you talking about? What is going on? Why are our cats, like, why are we waging our cats against, like, what? Or there's rats? It was only the board gamer, only the true board gamer would actually be like, oh, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. But anyways, it's a very fun game. I love it. I think the English version is called You're Bluffing. Doesn't really matter which version you get. There's no words.
All right. I moderately want to try that game.
Well, you need
That's
a group.
what I got out of this.
So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have no friends, so never mind. I'm good.
I was implying that, but I didn't say it.
Yep. All right. Well, my number one, Nate, is superior, without a doubt, to Coup Handle. Coup Handle?
Coup Handle.
Coup Handle, bro.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm surprised that this didn't make your list, or maybe you just didn't think about it. I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll see. This is Royals at rank 1278. Royals is, I believe it's a Dice Tower Essential, isn't it? This isn't Arcane Wonders, is it? Okay, now I have to stop the podcast.
Yes, it is.
And look this up.
Ooh, I don't know if it's Arcane Wonders. No, I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Well, because it can't be a Dice Tower Essential,
yeah.
not be.
That was my
Arcane
thought
Wonders.
process
Okay.
also.
Okay. So, yeah, anyway, Royals, this is like stripped down area control. There's a deck of cards. Those cards are different colors. Those colors relate to different parts of the big map. And you're trying to draw cards and get combos of those cards so you can lay them down and seize control of different areas. But there's multiple ways to score. It's like the first person to get all territory types within one region will score some points right away, and you get to keep that permanently. Like the second person to do so will get a little bit less. And then it's like at the end of each round, whoever has the most like influence or control between all those regions will score different points. But then there's like each of the cities that you're like placing influence on relates to a different type of person. There's like the princess and the king and like the sheriff, and whoever like gets the most of those. I forget how it works now. It's been a little bit. It's like whoever gets the most, whoever gets them first, yeah, they then claim those points as well. So yeah, just multiple different levels of area control. It's pretty fun. It was one of the earlier games I played in my board game history, and it still proves to be a quality game.
I still respect the design. I just don't think it's ever been a game I've really liked a ton.
Oh.
And so I wouldn't say I've never liked it. I never loved it. And at this point, it does not, as far as my enjoyment, it doesn't compare to the other games on my list. So.
Okay, so this was an honest list you made.
Absolutely. No neglecting here.
Good to hear. Yeah, ever.
Never. Not ever.
Hey, I think you got me Royals too, so thanks for that.
I absolutely did, Cody.
Yeah.
I think you didn't get me any of the games on my list. So.
I have no comment. All right, challenge accepted. I need to get Nate a game that is at least rank 1000.
No, Cody, here's a new challenge for you. You need to get me a game that will rank in my top 10. All right?
Oh, wow, that's a challenge.
And you need to keep buying me games until I deem that one of them could be in my top 10.
How about I just play games until I find a game that would go in my top 10, and then I'll just buy you that as well and see if it fits.
I'm also okay with this.
All right,
actually, you could probably just... No, Wayfarers isn't in my top 10. I was going to say Wayfarers. Never mind.
Where is Wayfarers?
It's definitely top 20. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is boring.
It's very boring. I like that. I feel like at least like 7% of our total podcast content has been us talking about our personal lists, our top 100 lists. Terrible content.
Whatever. And remember, a game doesn't have to be ranked better than 1,000 to be good. Well, now that we're in the outro, Nate, I'm sorry that apparently my ideas have just been too straightforward for the listener. Is this a problem?
Listener, back me up here. Both Cody's intro and his outro were just kind of like straightforward. And I feel like, I don't know if there's something going on with Cody, because this is not characteristic of him. You know, if you listen to our other episodes, which you should go back and do all of them, it's just, usually it's something witty, it's something funny. You know, and I don't know. I feel like maybe he phoned it in on these
And remember, Nate actually got his list right this time, so go him.